Hello, I'm Kyle from the Technology Learning Center, and today I'm going to show you how to create a sealed terrarium. As the chilly days of autumn will soon be here, this craft aims to create a tiny, self-sufficient ecosystem, all within a jar that can survive throughout the fall and winter, only needing a source of light or artificial light to keep itself going. To understand what materials you are going to need for this craft, first you will need to know how the plants within the sealed terrarium keep themselves hydrated. The sealed environment inside the jar will replicate the Earth's water cycle, just at a much smaller scale. When we add water to the jar during its creation, that water is going to seep into the soil and filter down to the bottom of the jar, watering our plants just like how rain gives water to plant life outside. From there, the water will start collecting on the bottom of the jar and in the roots of our plants until provided sunlight causes the water to evaporate, bringing it back to the top of the terrarium until it condenses as water droplets and begins to fall back into the soil, starting the whole process over again. Now, our sealed terrarium has 4 layers to it. First, a bottom layer of large pebbles that, as the initial supply of water is added to the jar, acts as the collection point for all the water to drain down into. The larger pebbles give space between the soil on the upper layer and the water that's going to pool down below onto the bottom of the jar. This is good as you do not want the water to simply soak up in the soil for long periods of time. This will rot the roots of our plants, so we want to make sure all of our water has a place to go to once it drains through the soil. Now, to keep our large pebbles and soil separated, for our second layer we're using a non-biodegradable mesh, in this case a piece of gauze, to keep the 2 layers separate. For our third layer, we're also going to need a material to filter the water as it cycles through the soil. For this we are using charcoal, more specifically activated charcoal or crushed up wood charcoal. We do not want to use charcoal briquettes as they contain chemicals that we don't want to get into our little ecosystem. Finally, our potting soil sits at the top of these layers, which will be the surface for which our chosen plants will live on. Plant-wise, you are generally looking for anything that likes to live in a humid environment, such as ferns, orchids, and mosses, as the inside of the jar is going to get quite humid. To get started, I first add my layer of large pebbles to the bottom of the jar, filling up about an inch of space. I am using a craft stick here to make sure that the layer is somewhat even. Next, I have my gauze and I'm going to cut to size. You will want to make sure that the gauze covers the entire layer of large pebbles on the bottom, as we don't want our soil to find a way down to where the water is sitting at. Now we add our charcoal filter, making sure to get a good coverage by spreading it around so that it covers our mesh. Next, our soil gets put on top of all of this. Depth-wise, it is all up to what type of plants you're going to put into this terrarium, as you're going to need enough soil so that the roots of the plants have room to grow. In my case, I am mostly using moss and a few small plants, so I opted for about 2 inches of space. Now, the top of your soil is not only where your plants are going to go, but also any extra pieces that will add to the look of the terrarium. I have a few pieces of sticks and wood chips to help with this. Now we should go ahead and spread around the plants inside the terrarium, making sure to dig any holes for the plants that have roots already attached to them, until the top layer of our terrarium is covered in foliage. Now, I did choose to not include all of the plants I had with me, as it would have made it a tad too crowded. This is generally something you want to avoid, since if leaves are leaning against the side of the jar when all that water starts to condense, then those leaves are going to start to rot, so you just want to make sure all of the plants inside your terrarium have plenty of room. Now, with everything in there, we're going to go ahead and give our plants a nice misting. This is going to add our initial and only amount of water that this terrarium is going to get. Finally, place the lid on nice and tight and find a nice windowsill to place this terrarium on. If you enjoyed this video and are looking for more crafts, be sure to follow the Technology Learning Center's Facebook page, as we will be posting more activities that you can enjoy at home with the family. Enjoy your terrarium.